Welcome to the Teacher's Journey podcast. I'm your host, Brian Costello. We're back for season 2, where we get to talk to even more incredible educators and learn about the stories that made them who they are today. And welcome back for episode 3 of season 2 of the Teacher's Journey. My guest today is Allyson Apsey, principal from Quincy Elementary and author of the great book, Path to Serendipity. Really excited to talk to Allyson today. I've had a chance to hear her on other podcasts and dig into her book a little bit. And I just think this is going to be a great conversation with lots of good things to share with everybody. Her journey, her story is really interesting, and I think that all of you are going to get a lot out of it. So Allyson, thanks for joining me tonight.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be on and to connect with you.
Absolutely. So you're a principal, you're an elementary principal, an author, but at some point, not so long ago, you got started with, you decided you wanted to be an educator, you want to be a teacher. So what was that like? Like, when did you realize that teaching was going to be your thing?
So I graduated from high school saying, I don't know what I want to be, but I know I don't want to be a teacher because I hate school. I wanted to be a hairstylist because I wanted to go to like a technical school and get the whatever training I needed to get done and over with so I could move on with life and not have to deal with school anymore. But instead I kind of felt an obligation to go to college, and so I started going down the route of going into business. One of my classes, my sophomore year of college, got canceled, and I had to fulfill it with another class that met the same requirement. And the only class that was available was educational psychology. And I remember that first day in class, I was sitting there and the professor said, raise your hand if you're going into education. And I looked around and every single person in the classroom raised their hand except for me. And, even though I wasn't going into education, I was still expected to do the same outside of class work in a classroom that everybody else was expected to do. So I needed to go volunteer in a classroom. And I volunteered in my aunt's first grade classroom. And over the course of, I think, just my first few times being in there, I realized that there's pretty much nothing else I could do, because I wanted to provide students for at least 1 year an educational experience that was personal, that they would remember, that helped them feel valued as students, and help them stoke curiosity and see possibilities for themselves in their future.
It's funny that your story kind of goes that way, because my story was I started very similar. I was in college, and my parents were both in education. I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't want to be a teacher, and I don't want to do things with blood. So that was pretty much it. Not that I can't handle it, it just didn't appeal to me. So I'm like, I don't want to be a doctor, and I don't want to be a teacher, and whatever else it is, I have no idea. And I actually graduated and worked in business for a year plus before I realized that I never ever was meant for that. And then I went into a school as a building sub, and I unpacked boxes and helped crying kids find their way to class on the first day of first grade. And I'm like, this is amazing. I love it. So it was like, it's funny. That's just very similar.
Yes, that's a great story.
Yeah. So it's just it's interesting how some of us who just don't want to be teachers, and we don't have any choice. We just can't really help it. It found us,
right,
regardless of, the circumstances led us to that in that direction, which is it's pretty cool to see that type of story unfold. And so you took this class, you started volunteering, and then all of a sudden you're like, this is what I have to do. And so you go to school and you get what you need to get, and you walk into the classroom, and there it is. So I know I closed the door in the first day, first moment, and I went from being like, I've got this, to I have no idea what I'm doing. It scared the heck out of me. I was like, oh man, this is a disaster. What did I do? And then, you just start going with it. But what was your first day, first year, the beginning of teaching for you?
It was very similar to what you just described, where I was feeling confident, like I had rave reviews in student teaching. And I ran a before and after school care program before I started teaching, and I was doing a great job subbing. So I had all of this. I ran a summer camp. I had all this experience, and I got into a classroom, and I was like trampled over, like stomped on by my 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students, because I was teaching a multi-age classroom. And my first teaching job was in a William Glasser quality school. And it was actually the first William Glasser quality school in the nation, which means that the school's philosophy is based on choice theory and reality therapy, which is the exact opposite of our training in college, where with choice theory, there's no rewards, there's no punishments. It's, we do things because it's the right thing to do, and we talk through things, and we make learning really meaningful and engaging. And it just was so different than the traditional system that I was trained in, that literally went into the bathroom that first day or first week of school, and like I'm pulling at my hair thinking, oh, I think I'm meant to be like a semi-truck driver or something. This is not working for me.
Anything but this, right?
Yes.
So obviously it worked out. I mean, obviously you got it figured out. So how did you get through it? I mean, how did you get through the first year where you're in the bathroom, like trying not to break down, and you're thinking about driving a semi? What is it how did you manage to get through it?
So I was super fortunate to get some extensive training in choice theory and reality therapy. And I really started looking at, well, first of all, how to meet my own needs in a way that is most effective for everyone around me. Because when you study choice theory, you first think about how the concepts in relation to yourself. Then you start applying them to situations like the classroom. Like, how can I make my classroom a place where students meet their needs for belonging, freedom, power, fun, and survival within the functions of what I'm asking them to do, rather than working against what I'm asking them to do in order to meet their needs.
And so just some training helped you pull through that a little bit. I mean, were there people in the school supporting you? Like, what was the environment like? Was it?
I was team teaching, and my teaching partner was awesome and kind of, just helped walk alongside me, and, was that voice of reason and voice of hope at the end of every day. And then that summer after my first year of teaching, I just revamped the classroom. I took everything I had learned the first year and made enormous changes to the structure of how I was going to teach, and even the physical structure of the classroom. And the next year was like 100% different. It was like the students and I were on the same team. Whereas the year before, it was like we were fighting a battle against each other every day.
Yeah, that must have been exhausting to have that feeling, especially when you have with all the kids you're working with and have them feel like that. But then,
right.
So year 2 is kind of a big turnaround. When did you feel like you really knew? So I know you you said you were really confident, you thought you were going to be amazing. And I pretty much had the same feeling. Like I'd worked in a classroom for 3 years as I was going back to get my teaching degree. I'm like, I know everything I need to know. I'm going to be amazing. It's going to be the best thing ever. And it wasn't. And it just wasn't. And so I wondered, when did you really feel like, okay, I'm comfortable with the fact that I do know what I'm doing. I am like, when did you build up some confidence in yourself to the point where you think I can do this and I can do it well?
I think there are a couple things. One is when I started realizing that I could have concrete expectations in the classroom, for the most part. There's always a student here or there that, we need to change things completely. But when I figured out that I could expect that students would treat each other a certain way, that they would engage in the learning a certain way, and really have that be the floor. Like, we don't go below that. Like, we work together, we figure this out. And, once you have a need-satisfying classroom, you have great relationships, and you have those concrete expectations, like, that's a recipe for amazing things to happen in the classroom. And once I figured out that recipe, then I felt like, oh, okay, I think I kind of know what I'm doing here. And then I became a leader among teachers, and being able to support teachers in the same way that I was supported when I was a new teacher also helps, I think, increase your level of confidence.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really good point that you made. And it's something that I like to stress with people is how you can help others. Like when you get to the point where you feel like you know what you're doing, it's time to turn around and pull the people up behind you.
Yeah.
And so I think this kind of leads nicely into one of the questions I was really looking forward to talking to you about is, at some point you decided to leave the classroom and go into administration. So talk about why you made that decision and what it was like to move from being in the classroom to being an administrator.
Okay. So there is a downside to the path to serendipity. Shockingly, there's a downside because I pretty much love everything. Like what I'm doing, I find joy in and figure out a way to love it. Nearly everything in my life. So I was absolutely loving teaching. And I taught 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade for 2 years. Then I taught 4th, 5th, and 6th grade for a year. And I was in a school that had just opened, and we were adding a grade a year until we got to 12th grade. And I felt this tug to move up and teach 7th grade. So then I taught 7th grade, then I taught 8th grade, and every single year, like, I loved what I was doing. I became a secondary principal and worked with students through 12th grade and absolutely loved it. Even though when I left college, I thought I was going to be teaching 1st grade for my entire career. So that's like, I'm going to use air quotes when I say like a downside of the path to serendipity of like going through life, looking for happy accidents and beautiful lessons in everything we experience. Because I fall in love with everything I experience, basically. So to say like I made this choice to go into administration would be not telling the truth, because that's not really how it happened. I helped open a charter school in Michigan, and I was the only teacher there who had experience in that kind of philosophy and that kind of setting. So I became a natural leader. And the principal was moving into a superintendent role and needed somebody to step up into the principal role. And she targeted me. She asked me.
So it just kind of fell right into your lap and
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay, let's do it.
I never saw myself as a school leader. I wanted to get my master's in educational technology, which at the time was like Palm Pilots. It wasn't like, what we have going on right now at all. But that's where I saw my future. And that changed when she asked me to become a principal. I felt like it was the right move because I was already a leader in the building.
For anyone listening who's under 30, Palm Pilots are basically just fancy like Texas Instrument calculators with a scheduler on it. Like that's pretty much what you were doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's that's wild. So just kind of from the work you were doing and the good things you were doing in classrooms, it just became something that happened where it happened and kind of fell into your lap and you ran with it and it worked out for the better. So then moving, you ended up, obviously now you're principal in elementary level. So you've moved again at least once, right? So just talk a little bit about what you do now and how, all those experiences that you've had in the past have kind of built into how you approach your work and, how you lead the school that you're working with now.
I don't want to sound cliche, but it is absolutely relationships first. So I am an elementary principal. I have, 550 young fives through 5th grade students at my school. And my philosophy in leadership is to support teachers. As a principal, I love students and I have so much fun with them. And I know that the temperature of the school is really based a lot on the leader of the school. And my interactions with students are really important. Don't get me wrong. But the real work in educating our students and having a powerful impact on our students as a principal needs to be through teachers, because the teachers are the people who are with them all day long. You know, I get maybe 5 minutes throughout the week to touch base with individual students unless they have a problem and need me. But students in an elementary school, teachers have 1,500 minutes with students in an elementary school week. That's a lot of time. So if I want to...
Never heard it in minutes before.
If I want to have any kind of impact on students, it needs to be through teachers. So then my job is to remove obstacles that are in their way, things that are preventing them from doing their very best work. I need to be in classrooms before school, after school, all throughout the day to see, you know, what's going on, what support do they need. I want to be a listening ear for struggles that they're having, for ideas that they need. So I guess just being present and really being relationship focused. And I also want to lead like a pirate. I want to have, you know, amazing, exciting things happening at Quincy Elementary for teachers. And then in turn, they have amazing, exciting things happening for our students.
Yeah, and I really like that, the whole concept and the way you talk about being a leader. I think that's kind of a teacher's dream, is to have the principal who just takes all the crap out of the way. Like, because there's so much junk that you have to do. And so like I worked as a tech integrator for the past 2 years, and now I'm teaching a special area class, and I'm back into doing a lot of the for lack of a better word, just junk that gets piled on. And I know a lot of it is important, and a lot of it is, you know, needs to be done, and it takes care of checks off a lot of important boxes. But at the end of the day, it's not the stuff that really matters when I'm working with kids. And the less of that I have to do, like while I'm prepping, the less after school, when I go home, it just makes my job so much easier to make their experiences so much better. And so right. The less I have on my plate that doesn't have to do with creating great learning experiences for the kids, the better I can do my job, which is creating those great learning experiences and creating the environment for kids to explore and learn. And I can only think of how frustrating it can be if you can't get rid of all the stuff on the side. And so it's really, really refreshing to just think of, leaders that focus on that, because as you do that, you just make it so much better for your teachers in terms of how they get to do their job. So I really do. I think that's fantastic. The way that you talk about, clearing the plate, so to speak, clearing all the obstacles, the things that stop your teachers from getting it done. I know you can't get rid of some of the stuff because it's mandated, it's required, it needs to be there, but anything that can not be there, anything that doesn't take away from the time they have with kids and time they get to work on making things for kids better, it's just, I really see that as super important.
And I think too, like as you were talking, I was thinking about like, in order to want to get creative and make incredible learning experiences for students, you have to feel strong and positive and empowered as a teacher. And that's the other responsibility that I think a leader has, is I want every single one of my teachers to feel like they could conquer the world because they are amazing and they have these incredible strengths, and also because they have this army of colleagues who stand right alongside them and right behind them. So if we feel strong and positive, we feel like we can accomplish anything. But if we feel weak and negative, even the simplest things seem so impossible and so difficult.
Yeah, I think that's true. It really is. And one of the things that I kind of refer back to, and I think back to when I was teaching elementary school, is you get in the middle of you have all these great ideas like the beginning of the year or after you come back from a conference, but it's not time to do them. And you're like, all right, I'm going to do this in January. I'm going to do this in March. And this is going to be a great activity in November. And then November rolls around and you're, knee deep in it, and you forget all about it because you lose some of that as the year goes on. And to have that support, to have the reminders that you're going to be able to do this, you're going to be great, it's going, and feel that positivity, feel that strength, it helps you to step back. And because one of the things that I found really difficult as an elementary teacher wasn't necessarily the tough times. It was when things were going smooth, because things were going smooth and I didn't want to stop and take it apart. Like, the routine was great, the kids were learning, but it was getting stale. And you'd let it get stale because it was going so well, that why would I want to change it? Why would I want to do something new? The kids are doing great. Everything's perfect. But the reality is, after a little while, it's going to get stale. And that great thing that you were going to do in January, you didn't do. And now it's February and things are in need of a refresh. And if you had just stopped the flow, slowed things down, and gone back and done those great things that you were excited about, it keeps they would have gone right back into the routines. When you switch things up, they'll go back to those routines they're comfortable with, but you break up the monotony of being in that same flow all the time. And that was one of the hardest things for me as a teacher, is when things were going great and smooth, and I didn't and I was just I would prep the same style every day. I knew what I had to do, and it was all done. It was ready to go. Everything was laid out. The kids were doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they were doing great work. But it gets stale. You do the same thing. You don't do the same thing every day, but you as the teacher do the same types of things each day, and the lessons are very similar for you because you've taught them before, and you're like, all right, they're going to do these types of activities here, and these types of activities here, and this type of thing over there, and then after a month or a half or 2 months of that, when you're like, oh, this is going great. And then all of a sudden the kids start to get off a little bit, and you start to get off a little bit, or you start to get lazy because it's just the flow. So you're like, oh, I'm in the groove. It's perfect. And I'm like, wait a minute. I need to stop and make some changes because things aren't going the way they were 3 weeks ago. And I missed the opportunity to do these really cool things that I wanted to do because I was afraid of or didn't think about messing up the flow.
Right.
And having the confidence to stop what's going well to do something special or to do something great, because it's okay to disrupt good for great. You can still get back to having a regular, high level of quality performance and quality classroom without taking it away. I really think that was one of the hardest things for me. And that idea that, you have support, you have strength, and it's okay to stop. A lot of times I didn't want to stop because I didn't want to stop going well. I didn't want to ruin it. But at the same time, I think that really could have been, I think it could have been there are things that I forgot to do or I skipped that I wish I would have done and then all of a sudden you can't do them because it's not the right time of year, or it's not the right, you're not working on those things anymore, and to go back to them makes less sense. And you just, you skip it and you move on and you think, all right, well, what can I do next? And finally you get back to some of those great ideas. So, I really do like the idea of the whole kind of community and the support and the build. Because I hadn't always had that as a teacher. I feel like now I kind of have that, especially my administrators, just you know what you're doing, you go ahead and do it, and I will trust that you're going to do it well because you know more about this than I do. Go for it. Which was one of those. I was my second year at this new district. It was so empowering. You know what you're doing, just go ahead and do it. I was like, all right, great. It's I'll stop in and check things out, but you just go ahead. So yeah, I'm going to kind of rambling and talking a little bit about some things, but I really do. I think that your story is so interesting because, like I said, things just kind of fall into place and you have connected to it, and then it led you to becoming an author. And I think that that's a really, really amazing thing. So the first time you and I connected, I was in an author support group, and one of the things I think is so interesting about teachers and educators as authors is they don't think about how special what they've done is. And I, especially now that I've had a chance to read a bit of your book and hear some of your stories, and I think that you have something special to share with people. And I think it's really, really cool. So can you talk about what it was like when you decided to write a book and what that decision was like and how the whole process went?
Another thing that just fell in my lap. No, I'm just kidding. That did not fall in my lap.
The whole book just
like, yeah, right there. So I started blogging after I became a connected educator and was inspired by George Couros and some of my Michigan principal colleagues. I started blogging in December of 2015. And
it's a good time to be blogging.
Yeah, it was good. It worked out good for me. So, and it just evolved from there. I've always loved writing. I felt like I had a book in me. I just didn't know what the book was. And then I was encouraged by some family and friends. In fact, my husband just said, just start writing like your stories, Allyson. I started writing them, and I thought, if the only people who read this book are my sons and their future families, that's enough to continue this. And I was enjoying the writing process so much because I was just sharing things that I've learned, things that people have taught me, stories that I've shared for years and years. And then I just I did get connected with Dave Burgess, and I shared a link to a Google Doc with him, and he sent it on to Shelley, and Shelley emailed me and said, we'd like to publish your book. And I was shocked, like chin to the ground. Oh my gosh, this is a dream I never even dreamed come true. And the whole writing process with the Burgesses is amazing. And so I signed the contract in October of 2017, and the book came out in May of 2018. So that was a relatively quick turnaround process, whirlwind. But it's been incredible to have those conversations with people across the country and even across the world about the ideas in the path to serendipity. And I feel like I'm learning every day. Like, you write the book that you need, and the lessons that are in the path to serendipity are things that I remind myself of every day. Like, Allyson, you wrote a book about this. Like, get yourself together, girl. Like, come on, you can handle this. You can do these hard things. And I do remind myself of those things every day.
Yeah. And yeah, you wrote a book about it. Like, you're the authority. You wrote the book about it. And so there's a lot of great things in there. Like I said, I've been reading it, and I've been kind of squeezing in bits and pieces through what's been a really crazy couple of weeks, but it's just some really, really amazing stories in there. I'm excited about what I'm going to get to in the next couple of times I get to sit down and read. If you were going to pick something like a lesson from your book that you think maybe is just super important for educators or just for people, what do you think that would be?
Wow.
Yes, I win. As long as I get somebody to say "wow" when I ask one question during the interview, I feel like that's a win.
I'm like scared. My computer just told me I'm low battery. But okay, so one of the things that I write about in there is kind of like a tongue-in-cheek advertisement, but it's called Naive Body Spray. And I think this is so important for educators to like apply this body spray liberally every day. And the idea is that you approach every situation with this naive approach where you just assume that people might be having a hard time, but they really want good things for themselves, and they just might need your help. So if you have a student who's, giving you a stubborn, no, I don't want to do it, approaching them with a mindset of, you need my help, honey. Like, I'm here to help you. What do you need? Instead of like, oh my gosh, here we go again. Another day like this, is just so helpful. And the Naive Body Spray is not just for use with students. It also is helpful with colleagues. We all have either colleagues who, pretty regularly or consistently are maybe not pleasant, or maybe have a difficult day, and just always going about our business assuming that they want good things. They really don't want to take out their feelings on other people and maybe don't even realize the impact their actions are having on others. And if we approach our colleagues in that way and not take things personally, I think that can be really helpful also.
I could not possibly agree with you more. And I think that applies as well with parents.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of times just, and so I think it's funny. The more I hear you talk about different things, the more I feel like we have so much in common in the way we look at things. And, one of the things that I had said last year to one of the middle school teams I was working with was having a tough time. A lot of difficult students, and they said, "Why can't they just get this right?" And I said, "Because they're seventh graders."
Right.
It is their job to mess it up, and your job to put it back together again and hand it to them all over again and say, "Here you go. You're going to do great things with this." And then they drop it on the floor and step on it and trip over it. Like it's kind of what seventh grade's all about. Like you make a lot of mistakes, you mess up a lot of things. Most kids don't have the executive functioning skills and the confidence and the general control over themselves to do the things you're expecting of them, but you keep expecting them to try and do it anyway. You just keep giving them the keys to the car.
Right.
And you do that over and over again with the same hope that they are going to get it right.
Right. And I think sometimes we expect things of kids that we don't expect of ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We think the kids are going to do this stuff, and it's so easy as the kids get older, especially, to think of them as more adult-like, because they become somewhat more adult-like in their conversations and the way they express themselves and the things that they want, but they're not. They're just not. And I mean, I wasn't able to effectively plan my time out, sometimes still not, but until I was in my mid to late 20s. Like until I was working 3 jobs and doing a grad program. Like it required that. But we expect a lot of kids, and sometimes it happens that way. And we expect the parents, like I always say to people, like, I've had training and 8 years of teaching in a primary grade level, K-2. And I have a 6-year-old, and some days I can't get her to put her shoes on and walk out the door. Like, imagine what it's like for somebody who doesn't have any of this.
Right.
Doesn't have the training and the skill sets and the understanding of child psychology and that kind of stuff, to try and parent their kids when they're working 2 jobs and they work 17 hours. They're just trying to put food on the table and make sure the kids have clothes, and the kids have homework and they don't know what to do, or they have whatever and they're not getting it and it's not working out, or they're having a problem. The parent didn't return your call or send back your email, or they're frustrated about blah, 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 blah. It's not always about you.
No. Yeah, it's rarely about you. We like to think that the world actually revolves around us, but in fact, it doesn't.
It only revolves around me.
Right,
nobody else.
Just yes.
Nobody else. The rest of you are just living in it while it spins around.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and it really is. And I think that your approach and your discussion of how important it is to give kids that benefit of the doubt, and to give your colleagues that benefit of the doubt. And I think parents and anyone else that you deal with in general in life, you want to give them the benefit of the doubt that people are in general good until they prove themselves otherwise repeatedly. Patterns of behavior, obviously, notwithstanding, people are generally good, and people are generally going to want to do well for themselves and help other people out if the opportunity presents itself, if they're capable of it. And so, I think it's great. I think that whole message is awesome. Next to last question. We'll do one more question before that. So kind of a piggyback off that question. So you had mentioned that one of the things that you think is super important is to work with teachers and to create opportunities for teachers to do great things. So if you were to give advice to teachers, either new or teachers who are struggling, or because there's a lot of teachers out there that struggle with the day-to-day grind, the struggle of being an educator every day. What advice or motivation or help would you offer? Like what would you say to those teachers who are struggling or who are new and are about to struggle? They just don't know it yet.
Yes. So I would say, don't feel like you have to do it alone. There are so many people who are willing to help. And if they're not in your building, if you don't find the right people to help you in the way that you need to be helped, get connected, because you will find people across the country, across the world who want to help you succeed and help fuel your soul and your passion for education. I think sometimes when we struggle with things, we look for people who can affirm our struggle, who can commiserate with us. Like, I have the worst class ever. And we look for the people who say, like, yes, you do have the worst class ever. And then lo and behold, that same teacher has the worst class every single year and find those same people to commiserate with them. And if you don't want to feel that way, find people who will help you problem solve or help you look at things in a different light or through a different lens, and who can help you move beyond the current problem that you're having now. That would be a piece of advice. And then, of course, always focusing on relationships. If you can convince students that the most important person to please in the classroom is you through the relationships that you develop with them, the sky's the limit.
If I could clap for that right now, I mean, I could, but I'd probably wake people up. But and honestly, that is a large part of what the teacher's journey is about. The podcast, the book, everything is about finding and sharing people's stories that you can connect with and helping people to understand that you aren't alone. And teaching can be so isolating. And so, you can find yourself alone so many times as the adult working through problems with kids. And if you don't have people to talk to, if you don't have people to work through that with, and not, like you said, not affirm your frustration and misery, but to help you work through the problems, it can really beat you down. And I love that message that you can, that there's somebody out there. There's always somebody out there who can help you, and not just help you talk about what you don't like, but to work through it and make it better and focus on positive things. And I know that focusing on the joy and the positivity is all about, is all throughout the path to serendipity. And I just, I genuinely appreciate messages like that. And I personally frequently need to rehear those things, despite the fact that I've written them and I've said them and I've done that. Like, I need to hear them sometimes from other people as well, to remind myself that it's not always that bad. And it's, no matter how frustrating it might seem, it's not that bad.
Right.
It'll be okay. And
we can do hard things together. Yeah. Do hard things.
Absolutely. And I think that's a phenomenal way to leave the podcast, is we can do hard things together. So Allyson, if people are interested in connecting with you and finding out more about the path to serendipity or the work that you do as a principal, or any other messages that you're sharing with the world, how would people connect with you?
So they can go to AllysonApsey.com or follow me on Twitter at Allyson Apsey. I think I'm at Allyson Apsey on Instagram and Facebook. And they can email me at AllysonApsey@gmail.com. I'm just keeping it simple.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's nice and easy to find Allyson anywhere you want to connect with her. She's got everything kind of across the board. So I really enjoyed this conversation tonight. Not just because it affirms a lot of things that I like to spout off about and talk about, but because I think it was a great reminder to all of us, and especially just for me, that we can do really hard things. We can do amazing things, and we can overcome what we think of as something really difficult, especially if we work with people who we care about, people who care about us. And we have those built those strong relationships. So, Allyson, thank you so much. This was a joy.
Thank you for having me.
And, I hope that other people will get as much out of this as I did. because I thought it was fantastic.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful to connect with you.
Absolutely. So thanks again for everybody listening, and we'll catch you next time on The Teacher's Journey.